Welcome to Silent Screams. Tonight, we take you deep into the unknown with 5 chilling paranormal encounters that will send shivers down your spine. These are stories pulled from the dark corners of Reedit, accounts that blur the line between the ordinary and the supernatural. Let your imagination run wild as we explore the inexplicable, the eerie, and the horrifying. Now, let us begin. It started with a thread posted by a user named Shadows in Time. The title was simple but ominous: 5 encounters I'll never forget. Their post outlined 5 separate stories, each more disturbing than the last. These weren't tales of flickering lights or imagined creaks in the floorboards. No, these were deeply unsettling events, grounded in vivid detail, each carrying a weight that only the truly haunted can understand. The first story came from a man named Alan, who claimed to have grown up in a remote countryside farmhouse. Alan recounted a series of strange occurrences from his childhood, each centering around a room at the far end of the house. This room, always locked, was filled with antique furniture and a grand mirror that his family never dared to move. His parents dismissed his fears, telling him it was just an unused guest room, but Alan always felt a presence lingering there. One stormy night, while his parents were out, Alan dared to venture into the forbidden room. He remembered how the key felt unnaturally cold in his hand as he unlocked the door. The moment he stepped inside, a chill swept over him, despite the summer heat. The room was immaculate, the furniture untouched by time, but the air was thick with a sense of dread. As he approached the mirror, he noticed his reflection didn't match his movements. While he was frozen in fear, his reflection tilted its head, smiled, and slowly raised a hand to wave. Alan bolted, slamming the door behind him, and never spoke of the incident again. The second tale came from a woman named Rachel, who worked as a night nurse at an old hospital. The building, with its long, dimly lit corridors, was unsettling enough, but the real terror began when Rachel started noticing strange things on the night shift. One evening, while making her rounds, she passed an empty patient room where she could have sworn she heard muffled crying. When she stepped inside, the room was empty, except for a single chair facing the corner. As she approached, the crying stopped abruptly, replaced by a whisper that said, "You shouldn't be here." The chair moved on its own, scraping loudly against the floor as Rachel fled the room. She tried to rationalize the event, but it only got worse. Doors would slam shut as she walked by, shadows darted across the walls, and one night, she saw a figure standing at the end of the hall. It was a man in an outdated hospital gown, his head tilted unnaturally, his eyes blank. Rachel called out, but he didn't respond. Instead, he started walking toward her, each step slow and deliberate. She turned and ran, but the footsteps followed, echoing louder and louder. When she finally turned a corner, the sound stopped, and the hallway was empty. Rachel quit her job the next day. The third account came from a group of friends who decided to explore an abandoned amusement park late one night. The park, closed for decades, was said to be cursed after a series of tragic accidents. As they wandered through the rusting rides and overgrown paths, they joked about the legends, trying to shake the creeping unease that clung to them. But their laughter died when they heard the faint sound of carnival music playing in the distance. The sound led them to the carousel, its paint peeling and horses frozen mid-gallop. To their horror, it was moving, the lights flickering weakly as the haunting melody played. One of the friends, Jake, dared to approach. He placed a hand on one of the horses, and the carousel stopped abruptly. The air grew thick, and they all heard a child's voice whisper, "Ride with me." Jake screamed as he stumbled back, swearing he saw a shadowy figure seated on one of the horses. They didn't stop running until they were miles away from the park. The fourth story came from a man named Marcus, a security guard for an old office building. His shifts were uneventful at first, but things changed one night when he heard the elevator moving on its own. The building was empty, and yet the elevator kept stopping on random floors. Curious and unnerved, Marcus decided to investigate. When he reached the elevator, its doors slid open to reveal a woman standing inside. She was pale, her clothes outdated, and her expression blank. Marcus asked if she needed help, but she simply stepped out and walked away without a word. He followed, calling after her, but she turned a corner and disappeared. Checking the cameras later, Marcus saw something chilling, the elevator doors opening to an empty cab, and no one stepping out. The final tale, perhaps the most unsettling, came from a young couple, Sarah and Luke, who had just moved into a new apartment. It wasn't long before they noticed strange things happening, a glass moving across the counter, lights flickering, and doors creaking open on their own. They joked about having a ghost, but the joke stopped when Sarah woke up one night to find Luke standing at the foot of their bed, staring at her. When she called his name, he didn't respond. His eyes were wide and blank, his face expressionless. She reached out to touch him, and he collapsed, as though he'd been asleep standing up. When he woke, Luke claimed to have no memory of the event. Over the next few nights, Sarah started hearing whispers, soft and indistinct, coming from the living room. She would find Luke there, standing in the dark, staring at the wall. One night, she followed the whispers and saw a figure sitting on their couch, its face obscured in shadow. It turned slowly toward her, and she screamed. Luke rushed in, but the figure was gone. The whispers, however, continued, growing louder each night, until they finally fled the apartment. These are only glimpses of the horrors that ordinary people have experienced, shadows of a world we can't fully understand. And yet, they leave us wondering, what would we do if faced with the same? The stories are not over, and the unknown still waits in the dark corners of our lives.